So today we will continue with the history chapter, the age of industrialization, and we had a look at proto-industrialization and the coming up of the first factories in England, and we have already started the pace of industrial change, and we have done, I think, the first 3 points here. And so the first one here was that the most dynamic industries in Britain, they were cotton and metals, and cotton first led the way till 1840s, and later on iron and steel, they led the way with the expansion of railways in England. And so what happened, the demand for iron and steel, it increased rapidly, and Britain was exporting iron and steel, means about double the value of its cotton export. So first industrial revolution, cotton led the way, and then it was overtaken by iron and steel. Then we already saw that the new industries, though it was a new technology, and everything, means so many things were in favor of that, but still they could not easily displace the traditional industries, means which were held in the home units. And even at the end of the 19th century, less than only 20% of the total people who were employed, they were only 20% were employed in these factories and mills, and the rest was still working in their domestic units. Then the third thing we had a look was that the pace of change, this new change, the pace of change in the traditional industries, it was not set by the steam powered cotton or metal industries. And so though in the traditional industries like food processing, building, pottery, glasswork, tanning, furniture making, and the production of making of implements and all, so in these traditional industries, though they did not use the steam power, but still it was not that they did not have any advancement or inventions. So small and ordinary inventions and innovations in these fields also were brought about growth in this non-mechanized sector. So though steam power were not used in all this, but still there were small innovations which helped increase the efficiency. Okay, now let's have a look at the fourth point. Now the changes, though new technology was available, but still the changes, they occurred slowly. It was not that as soon as the factories and the mills and new machineries and new machines came up, that throughout the whole landscape everyone started using it. It was not like that. And the reasons were many, like this new technology, it was quite expensive, and so merchants and big businessmen, they were cautious because it was costly. And then these machines, because they were just in their first stages, and so they often broke down, and when they broke down, so the repair was very costly. So many people were a little shy in investing in that. And so these machines were also, in the beginning, they were not as effective as the inventors and the manufacturers claim. And so many people, they did not just go all out after them. People were cautious about using them. And example, they have given the case of steam engine. So though now James Watt, he improved the steam engine which was produced by Newcomen, and he patented the new engine in 1781. And then his friend, his industrialist friend Matthew Boulton, he manufactured the new model. And so though this was such powerful new technology, but still, in spite of that, for so many years they could not find any buyers. And even at the beginning of the 19th century, all right, there were only 321 steam engines all over England, and out of these 320, 80 were used in cotton industries, 9 in wool industries, and the rest were used in mining, canal works, and iron works. Now, so only in these industries, this new, though this technology, new steam power technology, it was such amazing and powerful technology, but still only in these industries it was used. And they were steam engines, they were not used in any other industry till much later in the 19th century. So what we can say is that even the most powerful technology that could increase the productivity of labor so much, even it was slow to be accepted by the industrialists. And so all these things led the historians to accept and recognize that a typical worker in the mid 19th century, he was not one who was operating on machines or in factories and mills, but he was a traditional craftsperson and laborer. As we have already seen that only less than 20% were employed in technological advanced industrial sectors, but the rest still worked in their domestic units. Okay, now we move on to the next topic, hand labor and steam power. Now we are talking about Britain. So in Britain there was no shortage of human labor, because what happened, poor poor peasants and landless laborers, they moved to the cities in search of work. When they could not find any work in the countryside, in the villages, so many people, poor peasants, landless laborers, vagrants, those who moved from one place to another, they did not have any job, so they came to the cities in large numbers in search of work. And now here, as you already know that when there is plenty of labor, so when labor is in plenty, the wages will be low. And so industrialists, they had no problem of labor shortage, so labor was also in plenty, and there was no problem of high wage cost. Why? Because there were so many laborers available, and so there was no problem of high cost also. So many laborers available, so wages are low. Now these people also, they did not wanted to introduce machines, and when they will introduce machines, so obviously they will not require human labor anymore, and that also required very huge investment. So people, they were not like so much willing to buy this new machines and all. They were happy with employing human laborers. Let's see, there were some other reasons also why industrialists in Britain, they prefer to use manual labor or human labor. Let's see why. Now in many industries, the demand for labor, it was seasonal, means they only needed workers, a lot of workers only for a particular period in a year, and not throughout the year they required so many laborers. And for example, like in gas works, breweries, and now they require many laborers, more laborers during the cold months, because at that time they need to produce more. Alright, then so they needed more workers to meet their peak demand, which was in the cold months. Then bookbinders, printers, those who cater to the Christmas demand, now they also required extra hands, extra labor before December. Then at the waterfront, seafront also, what happened, winter was the time when the ships, they came and they were docked, and they were repaired and taken care of, they were maintained. And so in all these industry, the production, it fluctuated with season, means in winter they required more labor as compared to the summer seasons. And so industrialists, they usually preferred hand labor. Why? Because they have to employ workers only for a season, and for the rest of the season, why pay money? All right, why invest in these machines and all that? Why invest so much when you could only hire laborers for a brief period of time for a season? And so that is why many industrialists, they preferred hand labor or manual labor, human labor. Then one more reason was that there were many products which could only be produced with hand. because machines, like I told you, they were in their first stage, very means it was industrial revolution just came about, and new technology was there, so machines, and they came to be built. And so the machines at that time, they were made to produce uniform things. So they were made to produce uniform like things which look similar. So they were good to produce uniforms or standardized goods, means good of a same kind. But the demand in the market was many times for intricate intricate designs and specific shapes. People, they wanted things to be specifically made for them. They did not wanted things which everyone had. All right, so they demanded very sometimes, no, we want like this only. And now that could be done only through human labor and not through machines, because machines at that time, they produced only standardized goods, and those were for mass market, means for the, you could say, the middle and the lower section of the society, and not for the higher classes. They have also given an example, like in mid 19th century Britain, they had 500 varieties of hammer and 45 kinds of axes. Now the machines, they could produce like only one or two types. So all that had to be done by hand, and this required human skill and not mechanical technology. Then in Britain, during that time, the upper classes, means the aristocracy, the ruling classes, and the bourgeois, the high classes, they preferred things made by hand. You know how these upper classes, aristocrats were, they did not wanted that what the other person have, they also should have the same thing. They wanted their things to be different from the rest of the people. And so handmade products, they came to symbolize refinement. Means if you have handwork dress or handwork sari, even now they define refinement and class. Why? Because each product was individually produced for specific customers. They were carefully designed, and they were better finished. And machine made goods, they were to be exported to the colonies. So the upper classes also preferred things which were made by hand. Now in countries which had a shortage of labor, their industrialists, they wanted to use mechanical power, so that they did not have the need for human labor. But this was the case in 19th century America. But Britain, they had no problem of hiring human labor or manual labor, because there were so many people searching for jobs. Now whenever there is an abundance of labor, means the people searching for jobs, whenever there are more in numbers, then their lives are surely to be affected. Now as soon as the news of having possible jobs in these new factories and mills, it traveled to the villages, to the countryside. So hundreds of people, they came to the cities in search of work. But when they got the news, they came to the cities to get work. But the actual possibility of getting a job, now it was very difficult, and it often depended if you had a friend or a close kin, or you have relation, your relative already working in factory or a mill. If that happened, then you could easily get a job. Now if you had a relative or a friend in a factory, you were more likely to get a job quickly. But everyone did not obviously have social connections. They did not have their friends or their relatives working in factories. And so many people who came to the cities in search of job, now they had to wait for weeks, and many times they had to spend their nights under bridges, because they came to the cities only in search of work, and they did not get any work for weeks. Now they were without any work, no money at all. And so they had to many times spend their nights under bridges or in night shelters. Some even stayed in night refuges, which were set up by the private individuals. And other people, while they were waiting to get a job, they went to the casual wards, which were maintained by the poor law authorities. Now if you look at figure 10 here, see figure 10. The Houseless and Hungry. It is a painting by Samuel Luke Fills, and this was made in 1874. And this painting shows the condition of the homeless in London. And they applied for tickets to stay overnight in a workhouse, and these shelters where the people, they wanted to just spend the night, they were maintained under the supervision of the poor law commissioners for the destitutes, the wayfarers, wanderers, and foundling. And people, if you had to stay in this, it was a humiliating experience for the people. These people, poor people, came to cities in search of work, could not find a job for weeks, and now they had to spend their night somewhere. So they had to go to these shelters which were maintained by the poor law commission. And staying in these workhouses, it was a humiliating experience. Why? Because everyone was subjected to a medical examination to see whether they were carrying disease. So their bodies were cleansed, their clothes purified, and then they also were made to do very hard labor. And so the condition of the workers was very poor. Whenever they heard the news that there was a factory or a mill coming up, and jobs were available, so many people came to the cities. And when they could not find any work, so the condition of the workers, it became very pathetic. Then in some industries, like we talked about, there was seasonality of work. Only for a particular season labor was required. And so what that meant means throughout the rest of the year, they will not have any job, all right, without work. And after the busy season, the winter season was over, so the poor, they were again on the streets. They do not have any work there. Some, they returned to the countryside, to the villages, if they got any job there. But many people, they stayed in the cities, and they looked for odd jobs, means any kind of job they could find, so that they could earn some money. Now this was the condition till the mid 19th century, and the jobs were very difficult to be found. Now the condition became better a little bit in the early 19th century. So the wages of the people, they increased somewhat in the early 19th century. But we do not know. So though the wages increased, but we do not know that what was the condition of the workers, whether the workers were taken care of, they had proper homes to live in, and their working hours and all, we do not know. Now we only have average figures. Now these average figures, they don't give us the real picture, because there were so many types of industries. Now what was the condition of a person in a particular industry, like the condition of a person working in cotton industry could be better as compared to the person who was working in the seasonal in the places where they had required only seasonal arrangement. All right, so we don't know. Now the condition could differ. We do not know. Variations are not told that what was the condition in a particular factory. We only have average figures, and so that they don't tell us about the variations between trade, and also the fluctuations, that what happened year after year. For you could say for a period of 10 years or 5 years, we could have some average figures. So they don't tell about different sectors and the different industries. Neither they tell us about what happened in each year. So we do not know. Now because during the time when Napoleonic wars were fought, so what happened? The value of money, it fell down. So what workers could really buy with the same money, now that was different. Earlier, with the same money, they could buy more things, but now with the same money, they were able to buy less things. And so the value of the money also fell down. So we don't know that what really was the condition. So though wages increased little in the 19th century, but the average figures don't tell much about the real condition of the workers. And then there is one more thing, that the income of the workers, it depended not on the wage rate only, that what was the wage rate, but why? what was also important was the time of employment, the period of employment. Like we have talked about seasonal employment. So many people were employed only for like say 100 days in a year and not more than that. And so that their number of work, it determined the average income of the workers. But then what about the rest of the year? For the rest of the year they were not earning anything. And so even in the best of times till the mid 19th century, about 10% of the urban population, they were extremely poor. And when there were problems, economic slump, like the great economic depression of 1830s, then what happened? The proportion of unemployment, it went up. So periods of economic slump, like the 1830s, there was this economic slump, markets, they crashed. And so during that time, what happened? The proportion of people who were unemployed, they went up anywhere between 35 to 75% in different regions. So what we can conclude is that the condition of the workers, it was not good. Means though wages increased somewhat in the 19th century, but it not do much for the welfare of the people. And the fear of unemployment was so much that the people, they became hostile. Whenever new technology was introduced, so people were opposed to it, they were hostile to it. And so when the spinning jenny, it was introduced. See, spinning jenny, it was devised by James Hargreaves. You need to know that it is given in this box here. Sometimes it is asked, who made spinning jenny, who invented spinning jenny? So you need to know James Hargreaves. And so when the spinning jenny, it was introduced in the woolen industry, many women who had for long survived on the hand spinning, now they began to attack these new machines. Why? Because they were afraid that now they will lose their work, because this new spinning jenny will do the work. And this conflict over the introduction of the jenny, it continued for a long time. But conditions changed after the 1840s. Building activity, they increased in the cities, and now there were new opportunities for employment. Why? Because roads were widened in the cities, new railway stations came up, railway lines were extended in many places, so tunnels were dug, drainage systems, sewers, they were laid, rivers, they were embanked. So number of workers, now all this work started to be done after 1840s. And so more people were needed to work. And so the number of workers who were employed in the transport industry, they doubled in 1840s, and they again doubled in the next 30 years. So like what we could say is that now more people after 1840s, they were able to find jobs. Okay, so understood till here, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.